Up next on Three Guys and a Trek, we cover Season 1, Episode 11 of The Next Generation. The Big Goodbye. I don't know why I said last. Captain Picard and some of his crew are caught in a deadly trap in the holodeck as a result of a ship-wide scan from an alien race. So, we're to the trope of the evil holodeck.
The evil holodeck. It starts today.
It starts today.
Mm-hmm.
Which I've heard about it, but I hadn't seen an episode where it actually happens. So
Right.
So I think we talked about earlier to rate the episode first, and then after we've discussed it, see if it's changed.
Oh, okay.
So-
That's right.
I'll start off. This is out of 7. I'll give it a 3 out of 7.
3 out of 7.
Yeah.
See, I was going to go higher. I'd say about a 4.5. I like this one.
That's where I was at, 4.5. I thought this was a fun little episode.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So now after we pick it to death, we'll see if they go
We'll see
up
if
or
it
down.
changes. Yeah.
All right. Introductions. I'm Dennis. I've seen this show, 1,000 times, back to back to back.
Yep. I'm Matt. I've never seen the whole series before.
I'm Mike, and I've seen most of the series, but not all of them. This one was definitely new to me. I don't remember seeing this one before.
Mm.
So what was your first, what'd you think? What'd you think? I've got lots of opinions about this. I like this episode. This was fun for me. It introduces a lot.
I thought this was a fun episode. There were definitely some corny parts where I rolled my eyes, like, okay, yeah. But I thought it was a good episode. It kind of played on their infatuation with Earth history.
Right.
So, what'd you think, Matt?
I thought there was some good stuff in it. I don't think it lived up near to its potential.
Okay.
Mainly because the A plot and the B plot didn't really seem connected in any way whatsoever, other than the.
Oh, they weren't.
I thought there'd be some other thing, but it was just
really
to add
was nothing.
urgency
Mhm.
to the whole thing. That was it.
Yep.
There really wasn't any other reason for the alien subplot
You needed,
besides triggering it and having some kind of urgency. And it was a really weird need they had to.
It was a bizarre
Um,
alien interaction there.
I did like Data in it. I like Picard. I like they turned up the heat way up on Picard and Crusher this
Mhm.
episode.
Yes,
like
they
all of a
did.
sudden it's back.
Yeah.
And they make it obvious in this one. I knew the fiction expert, because they have a fiction expert now on
Of
the show. I
course.
knew
No,
that he was
it was
probably he was either going to die
No,
or
he
get
wasn't
really
a
injured.
fiction. He was a history expert.
Was he history?
I think it was
I thought I
history.
heard fiction
20th
expert.
century.
Yeah, I think it's
Expert.
history expert.
I could have sworn they said
Yeah.
fiction expert. So it was-
Well, I mean, on a ship of 1,000 people,
you might.
you
yeah.
need an expert of everything.
I knew he was going to either die or get hurt, because he
Right.
was just some.
He was the
random
red shirt.
He was the red
rando,
shirt.
yeah.
I just knew it, and as soon as, and I could guess how he was going to happen.
Yeah.
I have some problems with the way he got shot too, but we'll get to that later.
Yeah. The
Oh, come on, man. It's the 80s.
the way the way he the bullet didn't seem to have any weight to it when it hit him.
It really did not. Yeah.
Well, he spun. Well, all right, we'll get to that later.
Okay.
All right. I mean, we can go into it now if you want. I've got 2 major issues with him getting shot. When he got shot, he spun to his right,
Mm-hmm. But he got
but
shot
he got shot on the
side.
left.
Yep.
Number 1.
Yeah, it was
Number
a very
2,
weird fall.
Yeah, number 2, the guy that shot him was holding the gun dead level, shoulder height, pointed straight out.
Yeah.
Shot him just above the waist.
It's a terrible shot.
I mean,
That is an awful
from
shot.
Terrible
like
guy.
6 feet away.
It was just complete luck.
That is the most extreme bullet drop I have ever seen. Okay, I feel better now.
No,
Okay,
I'll
that's
give you
fair.
that. I'll give you that.
That's fair. It is it's supposed to be like the moment that they realize, oh man, this stuff is real.
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
you think they would have paid some more attention to that type of thing.
To that
This is the
little
moment
detail.
that it's gonna turn the whole episode.
In that genre, most of the time, the guy doesn't have the gun straight. I'm doing it like you can see it on the podcast. He doesn't have his arm straight out, shoulder length. He usually has his arm down to his side,
Right.
bent at a 90.
Right. And then
Then
it would be a gut
in the
shot.
gut.
Yeah.
But and I know they shot him in the gut, so it didn't kill him instantly. 'Cause
That would have ended. That would have.
that would have kind of ended that
Yeah.
episode. But
My issue with that was at the and we're kind of we get ahead of ourselves a lot here, but at the end of the episode, Data snatches the gun from the other henchman and kind of pinches the barrel closed. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, that's easily within Data's abilities. But if so, we know that Data is superhumanly strong. We know that he's resilient, and we know that he's fast. Why not? All right, let him take the gun. He could have easily, if he had gotten shot, he's not going to get hurt. And even if he does, he's the robot. You know what I mean? Not that he's not more important than somebody else, but it seems to me like he's less likely to be seriously injured. You know what I mean?
he was the only piece of technology they had with him.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, but to me, I don't know. There are so many good things about this episode. This episode opens up a lot of things that'll be called back on. Like you said, the Picard Crusher relationship. It really did get a big spotlight this time. They had a couple of scenes where it was, they could have been the only two people in the room, and they were just nose to nose. It was, like you said, hot and heavy. So that was I liked that. The Dixon Hill, you introduce that he comes back, that whole genre of holodeck novella, I guess, if you want to call it that, where he's in that situation. That gets called back on quite a bit. The whole idea of holodeck beings trying to get out of the holodeck, trying to somehow exist outside. That gets called back on quite a bit. And then very briefly at the end, you get the cop friend, right? Dixon Hill's cop friend. And he says, when you leave, does my world keep going? Does my wife and kids, do they keep going?
Are they still there?
Right. And it's this whole idea of, the hologram sentience, right? The holograms, are they?
Yeah.
And that actually plays out a lot in Star Trek Voyager, and where you get a hologram doctor, and you end up with entire alien races that are holograms that are light-based life forms essentially, and it so you kind of start getting some of these callbacks, and this episode kind of started a lot of the idea of how much do these holographic beings that they're computer generated, but obviously they've got some, whether or not it's programmed into them or not, how are they any different than Data? Obviously he was worried about his livelihood and his family's livelihood, so he obviously understood that danger, which is one of those tests for sentience. Are you aware of your own mortality? So obviously he has that awareness. So at what time does it make more sense to leave it running? This is a living being now, and not just a.
Do you have any responsibilities after bringing a universe?
Exactly.
Are they? Yeah. What are they exactly?
Yeah. So there's a lot in this episode, like I said, that comes back, and it's at this point it seems, that was that was a silly episode. There was there's a lot of humor to it. It was one of the few episodes, maybe only episode that won an award, a Peabody award.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I mean, this was a solid first season episode. Like I said, it to me it was it was all of those things, but knowing where things are going Star Trek wise from here, over the next 10, 15 years, it really checked a lot of boxes. So.
It did introduce some interesting ideas. I just thought it didn't necessarily come together at this point, because it was very weird and potentially thought provoking when we was asking, is this still gonna?
Right.
Is my world going to continue?
Right.
Like you mentioned, and I didn't expect them to be able to walk off. I was very curious because it was obvious they were going to one of the holograms is going to walk
Right.
off. So what's going to happen
Right.
Right.
at that point? And when they existed for a time outside of it, it's like, okay,
Yeah. Which that
how what are they exactly?
Yeah.
And
that's a little bit less than normal. As it goes forward, they disappear immediately upon leaving.
okay, so that would make
Because
more sense. in my
it's a
head.
projector.
Yeah.
They're a projected image. So they do, and you'll see some of them even stick their arm out of the doorway and their arm disappear, and they pull their arm back in from the doorway and it comes back.
Okay.
So it's more of a hard barrier
Mhm.
than what it was in this episode. But,
Yeah.
so, but yeah, like I said, to me it was solid. There were a couple of things. My first thought when I saw it was this really could have been an episode in any season. There's no reason that this episode wouldn't have fit in any season. Some of the players were a little bit different than what you would find in other seasons. Worf still doesn't feel like a character to the show. To me, Worf seems like a neutered attack dog at this point.
Mhm.
Geordi's still, almost subservient to Wesley Crusher. And
Well, they did have some kind of mentorship
yeah,
moment, which I thought was nice.
yeah,
So
I
slow
think that's
down.
what-
You're gonna.
yeah.
It's easy to miss.
I think that's
Slow
what they
down.
were trying to go for
Yeah.
there, and that felt like that one scene and that one line felt like a nice touch to me to kind of
Yeah.
put their relationship back in perspective, where he's
Yeah.
not necessarily subservient, like you said.
Right.
Because before this line, I would have thought that same thing. It's like, well, Geordi can handle it. Well, no, his mom's in there too. Oh, okay. Well, come on, Wesley.
And then
Wesley's
takes
going to
over.
go in there and save the day, and Geordi's just relegated to, oh well, here comes Wesley. And
Yeah.
but then he leaned in and looked over his shoulder and goes, "No, calm down.
Yeah.
If you get in a hurry, you're going to go right past it."
Yeah.
Mhm.
And it's like, that's a nice touch to put it back in perspective of where they should be.
Yeah.
And so,
Mhm.
but yeah, as soon as it all went bad and his mom was caught in there, I thought, oh boy, here comes the Rainbow Warrior.
The Rainbow
You're
Warrior.
going to save the day. That outfit is horrible. I like Wesley Crusher at this point. But, it's easy to play on that trope of,
Mhm.
the Wesley Crusher
Yeah.
thing. But,
So then
Yeah.
you've got one of my favorite tropes on Star Trek is when they do the whole mob, the 1930s, the mafia,
Yeah.
like I said, you go back to the Dixon Hill, and Data, he'll always do the voice. There's no reason that he should have even known that voice existed, because all he did was read the books. He's got no context for voice patterns from reading books, but he did the he did the stereotypical mob guy kind of voice inflection.
I thought about that. And if he downloaded all of the media related to Dixon Hill.
That's true. Could have been all media, not necessarily just the books.
Right. And that's the one loophole I found, is if he found all media related to Dixon Hill, he could have gotten a radio program, a TV program, a movie, or just when he got into that time period, he could have found something. I don't know. But they definitely didn't tell you how he found it.
No, not at all.
They just left it hanging.
Is that normal for? Because it seems like an inefficient way to transfer information from one computer to another. Is
To have the one
text on the
computer
screen.
He does. He reads things.
So-
It's almost like Flash in the TV show.
Right, yeah.
Where he'll read
Exactly.
a physics book or a math book and then just flip through it real quick. Yeah, Data he'll bring up schematics, or he'll bring up text, or he'll bring up something on the screen, and he downloads it visually, I guess. Yeah.
Because he did tell the computer to do it faster.
It's true.
Mhm.
So
It's true.
Yeah. I did
But-
like the mob boss.
Yeah.
It was a pretty well-rounded
Yeah.
character.
He
It
was
wasn't
a
it
good
wasn't a
one.
lazy.
yeah,
Bad guy.
they did well. He had a personality.
Right. I'm
The whole
looking
thing
here
about
now.
manners was
Yeah.
Oh
pretty cool.
yeah, he
Yeah.
I
really
mean, that was good.
yeah,
There's no need
he
to
really
dispense with
kind of
civility.
Mhm.
Right.
He played that I guess Al Capone or Michael Corleone, that kind of the well-dressed, well-mannered, friendly to a point kind of a mob boss. He did it he did it well. But apparently you brought up the Rainbow Warrior a minute ago. Did you read about the
Sorry.
did you read about the interaction between this Lawrence Tierney, the mob boss? Apparently he ran into Wesley Crusher offset. He ran into
yeah.
what's the kid? I can't even think of his name is now. Who plays Wesley Crusher? Why can't I come up with a name off the top of my head?
Well, I'm drawing a blank.
Wow, how bad is that?
Will Wheaton.
Will Wheaton.
Wow.
Yep. No, we watch Star Trek all the time. We're nerds. We're computer people. I promise. Yeah. So this guy Tierney, he runs into Will Wheaton offset, and he says apparently the conversation goes something like, "Wow, you're a skinny guy. Do you play football?" And Wheaton's like, "No, I don't play football." And he goes, "What are you, some kind of sissy?" And he uses an F word that is a derogatory term for gay people. You some kind of sissy or something? And the Will Wheaton's like, "No, I'm just I'm not strong enough for football." And he's like, "Well, maybe if you played football, you'd be strong enough for football." It's basically the way the conversation went. And to me that almost speaks more to this mob boss. I can almost see this same mob boss character as having that same conversation with any kid on the street in 1930s New York or 1940s New York, and it makes you wonder, how much of that mob boss mentality, that guy's guy, the made man, came from that's just this guy's character. He's a character actor, and that's what he does. Because he really, he nailed that role.
Yeah.
It was just kind of a weird interaction. Apparently, Will Wheaton talks about that later on, as he's left his Hollywood now, so I'm sure he uses that, and
now that he's woke,
right? It's a story he
the
can
dark
tell
times
to his fans.
of Hollywood.
There was another character that I had seen somewhere before. The guy who sold the papers.
Oh yeah, he's been in a lot of stuff.
Dick Miller. I hadn't looked him up yet, but yeah, he shows up in all kinds of stuff. He was in Terminator and the Gremlins, but he was just kind of one of those guys he's always a newspaper salesman, or he's cleaning the floors, he's a janitor, or he's whatever, but he's always one of those character actors who just kind of shows up out of nowhere to kind of be almost a piece of advice just from just a
story enhancement.
Exactly. You know what I mean? So, but he was another one that kind of showed up, and he really kind of set that period well.
It's one of those things where you could have had that scene without him.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Easily. It could have just been Picard walks by, picks up a paper, and then him and Data and the red shirt are sitting there talking about current times. But it would have been a fine scene, and it would have helped things, but it added a little bit of humor and a little bit of personality, because they were going on with that scene.
Oh, yeah.
And the whole time they're going on with that scene, you got this newspaper salesman going, "What?
Yeah.
What are you all talking about?"
Yeah.
And it just,
where are you from?
Yeah. And it was just that nice touch. He was just that nice story enhancement.
Yeah.
That.
Well, it forced the crew to kind of interact more with the time period. You know what I mean?
Right.
With Picard trying to force some of the lingo. Hey Mac, I'd like to buy a paper. That sort of thing. Kind of force some of that at least pretending that they belong where they are playing that role, to have that character there for them to interact with.
Yeah,
that was
There are some weird things in this episode that you realize they know nothing about. So Halloween apparently is something that
Halloween.
I have no idea about.
Halloween?
Picard was really confused
about
that word, which I found odd. And then considering especially now it's closing in on Christmas is the most popular holiday.
True.
In our times. And then Picard couldn't think of the word for city block. It's like they don't have city.
Right.
They don't have any more city blocks.
How is your world, segmented out?
How's it organized?
Yeah.
And then Gum.
Gum was
Dr.
new.
Crusher.
That
Gum
was
was
awesome.
new, which he just swallowed it. Which also brings up another question: what was that made of? Was it a projection? Once it went in her mouth, is it like what? What is it?
You wonder the same thing about the cigarette.
The cigarette.
He smokes the cigarette and coughs,
yeah.
and it's like, well, that's light projected smoke at that point. What is? And then the lipstick. that gets stuck on his face.
There.
Realistically, it probably should have disappeared.
Mm-hmm.
The bullet, so when they take this guy to sick bay, the bullet's not going to still be in there, but all the damage that it did will be.
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple things like that where it kind of, like you said, what is it? How does that interact with them? And like we said before, these are there's holographic projections. There's no way the projector can get inside of you. So once the bullet entered this guy's body, should it have just disappeared and not done any damage? The smoke, the same thing. Once he inhales the smoke, did they eat on this one? I don't think they ate.
They didn't eat other than the gum.
Other than the gum.
It's like it injects them as soon as they walk in with some kind of nano machine thing
right.
that they can then mod it, which is terrifying in and of itself. But
well, and if you go back to the first episode, they talk about it as being kind of tied to the transporters, where some of it is solid, some of it is light. So it could you could fudge with some of the rules of holodeck to try to make some of that make sense, but
because the transporter apparently transporter meat,
right.
Yep.
So,
but the gum scene. I thought Gates McFadden did a good job this episode. I thought she really played her role.
Yeah.
I thought she played her role well.
And, they did a trope that is old and everything, but for some reason in this episode, for me, it just worked. And that was at the very beginning when he's talking about how much he enjoyed it. And he goes up and talks to her, and he invites her to go with him. And she's like, "Oh, I'd love to." And he's like, "Great, and we can get this guy to come with us." And then she just leans back and she rolls her eyes. She's like,
"Yeah."
It's like, it was supposed to be a date. What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
And I just, that's old. It's played out. They do it all the time. But for some reason here, it just worked.
Yeah. I like the idea of Picard as kind of this clueless suitor for, for Beverly Crusher. He obviously he likes her, she likes him, but during their interactions, sometimes he just seems almost completely backwards. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's just, and I like that idea because he's obviously a intelligent man. He's successful. He's confident. He's a leader. And then when it comes to this woman, he just does not have a clue.
I mean, he gets it when they're in there, and they're about to walk away, and and Data and the other guy in red shirt like, "Hey, can we come too?" And they're both just just internally sigh. It wasn't audible, but you can hear it.
And I really wanted at that point, I really wanted them to call back to her reaction to when he invited him, during that scene, for her to just kind of look at him like, "You invited me.
This is your fault.
This is your fault.
Yeah,
you invited."
Well, I didn't know you were going to wear that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like I said, she nailed it. The gum thing was great.
Her watching the other girl.
And then her she opens up the compact and she kind of blows a little bit, and she gets a little puff of makeup, and shocks her. Like I said, you would almost think that she had never seen one of them. That this is 350-year-old technology at this point.
Well, she sits down to her first, and I thought this was a hilarious little touch too. Is when she sits down next to her, and she's kind of checking her out, and then you see that hand come down on her lap, and it's like, you don't really pay much attention to it, and then she pulls her skirt up.
Yeah,
because the girl next to her is showing more legs, so maybe I need to show more legs.
Yep. And then the girl gets hauled off to.
She covers up. She covers up.
It's like, you know what? Maybe that's not the girl I want to emulate. That's my mistake.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah, but that the whole idea that it's, so I think I saw in the details that this takes place in like the year 2360 something, right? So this is 350 years in the future from now, almost 400 years in the future from the time period that they're in. So, he looks out the window and he's amazed by things like automobiles, cars driving down the street. He doesn't know what Halloween is. They don't know what gum is. But you think back to some of the stuff, 400 years ago, that's a long time. I mean, think about how much, just our world has changed in 400 years.
Yeah.
You know, if you got sent back and all of a sudden you're seeing people on horse-drawn carriages, you know, that would be baffling. You know, it's like, you know, the smell, the sounds, the sight, some of the things that they ate, you know, some of the things that they believed, how, you know, some of the things they celebrate or didn't celebrate. You know, think about how much things have changed in, you know, 300 or 400 years.
You think about a society, though, that is so wanting to understand every other culture, though,
That maybe,
and how they developed,
Right.
that they would have, they would have
a little
some-
more
a
self-awareness.
little more especially someone like Picard, who
Right.
is supposedly a buff about these sorts of things,
Right.
and is an
That's
very
true.
well educated man. And
That's true.
I don't know.
If
it
he-
just felt
Yeah, because if he was a big fan of this character and this character's books,
Mhm.
well, they were reenacting one of the books.
Mhm.
So he should have known that the line about Halloween was coming.
Well, not really, because I mean the character was reacting to the suit that he was in, the uniform. So that wouldn't have
Oh, yeah.
necessarily
It's
have
just
happened in the
improv.
book.
But if that's just a random comment that she's going to make, then you would have to think that Halloween would have been mentioned at some point in one of these books.
Yeah, maybe.
I mean, if your big thing is 1930s area mobster and
Right.
private detective, believe me, I listen to that radio classics, and they cover all the holidays.
Yeah.
Valentine's Day, Halloween. I mean, they talk about all of it.
Yeah.
If someone was able to program the holodeck to create sentient beings that knew about Halloween,
That's true.
I mean, that's
Now that is true.
Right.
So you've got somebody programmed this stuff into it. So somebody knows about bubblegum.
yeah.
Somebody knows about cars. Somebody knows about Halloween.
Or they
you
just
know.
hyper specialists in those areas.
Yeah,
maybe.
right. Then-
Yeah.
And it could be. It could, you know, you get into, obviously you don't get into it in Next Generation, but you get into the idea of these hollow novels, essentially, these storybooks that are told on the holodeck.
Mhm.
And, you know, how they're written. And there's authors of these programs. So
Okay.
it's not just a programmer writes a program for, you know, any random thing. You know, eventually you get specialists who you know, I've written a love story or I've written a mystery, just like now where you've got authors who specialize in horror novels or sci-fi novels or, you know what I mean, and they are specialized. You know, they do know more about the time period that they write about, or the I guess the genre that they write in than other people do. So there may be something to that.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's back up for a minute. Outside
Sure.
the holodeck.
Outside the holodeck.
Dr. Crusher. Getting ready to walk in the holodeck. She's waiting patiently.
Mm-hmm.
And it finally says, you can go in. And the door opens. Gets halfway open. Starts to close. Starts to open. Starts to close. Starts to open. Starts to close. Finally opens. She walks right in.
She doesn't even think about it, does she?
I am sorry. No.
Yeah, at that point it's time to, you know, hit the communicator or call, you know,
And say, hey, there's a problem here.
can somebody come get me? I don't trust this thing. Yeah. And that's another weird thing. You know, Picard he makes the comment, you know, the holodeck does amazing things with finite space or you know, to something to that effect.
Mhm.
So she's entering this holodeck. And she can't see anybody else there. She's entering somewhere. We assume it's close to the police station because she shows up at the police station. But I don't I still can't quite figure out, and it'll always be a question for holodeck. You've got people in multiple areas that's bigger than what the holodeck actually is. You know, the actual size of the room.
Mhm.
And I still can't quite wrap my head around that. You know, how does she, you know, how does your voice not carry? How do sounds not carry? How, you know, I guess it's just an odd thing, an odd piece of technology.
Yeah. Something that hasn't been thought out very well at this
Right,
point.
right.
It's just a fun excuse to
Oh,
do
absolutely.
some
To go and do some crazy stuff.
crazy stuff.
Yeah.
Which makes sense.
Absolutely. All right, so still outside the
Because
holodeck.
I mean, at this point, what they've done, what Star Trek has done with this is because I'm sure on a show like this, like you said earlier, we're all geeks, we're all nerds, we're all whatever. I'm sure there's a bunch of those working there too. And somebody at some point went, you know what? Here's this comic book I read. It's called the X-Men. And they got this thing called a danger room.
Yeah, right.
They got a danger room. We can do that.
Sure.
And somebody went, well, what does it do? Well, you go in this little room. Well, it's a large room, but it's finite space, and you can go anywhere and you can do anything, and things are real. And yeah, sure, let's do it. That was the pitch.
Yep, absolutely.
I mean, because that's what this thing is.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, it really hasn't been thought out very well. For this guy gets shot, will they take him off the holodeck? Are they going to try to take the bullet out?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And this is so far in the future, and the weapons are so advanced and everything. Who are they going to get to take the bullet out?
Do they know how?
Who's ever done that before?
Do they know how to take the bullet out?
Yeah.
No, yeah.
So,
I mean, I guess could you beam the bullet out? I don't know. I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know.
And where they get the clothes before they didn't just have them laying around.
No,
Probably just some more transporter clothes.
Transporter clothes or replicator. You got the thing to make
Replicator.
the food. You know.
Yeah.
Have they done much with the replicator yet?
They haven't.
No.
Not seen replicator yet.
It's been mentioned, but we haven't really
Has
seen
it? Yeah. Like I said, I'm falling behind on my lore here. I don't know when the replicator shows up. But yeah, you get a lot of stuff that's replicated. So you food and clothes, and now every once in a while you'll see they'll show up in the holodeck, and they'll actually have the holodeck change their clothes for them, so it'll project clothes onto them, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's probably more common.
That makes sense. That makes more sense.
Yeah.
I thought
Yeah.
that's what was going to happen.
Right.
But
That's what I expected too.
Yeah.
When he walked on there in his uniform and people started talking about it, I expected him to kind of close the door behind him and,
Mhm.
you know, computer, give me, you know, something more suited to the 1940s or
Yeah.
whatever.
I mean, you could tell they had some fun with this episode.
Mhm.
There's some good,
Yeah.
good shots and effects that probably weren't easy, but they just
Right.
wanted to show off a little bit.
Yeah.
So
I like they gave the main characters the ability, the opportunity to act a little bit more. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Outside of it's a space drama. It's
mhm.
like now we're doing a period piece. You know, now we're really doing something different.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed that too.
So at the end of the episode, the greeting
Mm-hmm.
that Picard had to deliver, you think that was written?
Or did he just make
Or do
that
you
up
think
on the fly?
Picard, they told him, yeah, we got nothing. We need you to make some weird noises. He just got up there and went at it.
Well,
You know what I mean?
you see Troy behind him mouthing some of the phonetics while he's doing it. So I think some of it was there. Whether or not the whole thing was, and he just kind of,
I mean, it was fantastic.
oh yeah. They were apparently the set designers and the special effects people were upset that the Harada didn't make it onto screen. They had come up
Mhm.
with a pretty good character design for them. They were supposed to look kind of like yellow jackets or like wasps, like
Oh.
very insectoid.
Mhm.
You know, black and yellow stripes and kind of, you know, triangle shaped faces and antenna waving and that sort of thing.
Mhm.
Oh, you said something about Worf earlier. He did
Mhm.
have one interesting thing that I really would have liked to be expanded on in some way.
I know what you're gonna say.
But when Riker tries to talk to him again, and they play this horrific sound
Mm-hmm.
that hurts everybody's ears on the bridge, and they're all covering their ears and making all these weird faces and everything, and Worf sits up like a dog that you just held a treat out in front of his nose.
Yeah.
Huh?
It's like
And he's like looking around like, what was that?
What is that?
Was it what? And it's
Is that
like
a Klingon
it's like
mating call.
and it's like Worf's going to be able to turn around and tell these guys
That
what they
is what
just
I.
said.
That's what I thought.
this
too.
is going to be great. They thought this through, and then it just clipped to the next scene, and I'm like, oh, or not.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
Like I said, to me, that's what led to my whole idea of him being a neutered attack dog. It was like somebody blew a dog whistle, And he just kind of, his ears perked up and he started looking around like, ooh, somebody's, needs me right now. And then they cut away from the scene. I'll be happy when Worf actually becomes a character more than just more than just a stage prop. At this point, he's makeup in a chair and,
Yeah. The closest we've got is the second Q episode where the female Klingon.
Yeah, you had that.
The closest we've gotten with a true.
But you can tell that they really don't know what to do with the race that was the main antagonist for the original Star Trek.
Yeah.
Because that's what the... I mean, at least for the TV show. I know in the movies they branch off into some other things. But for the TV show, the Klingons were it. They were the big bad.
Yeah.
That's what they dealt with on the episodes. And
the majority of the movies.
I think in the majority of the movies, but they branched out a little bit, but not much. It still always came back to the Klingons because that was his ultimate nemesis.
Right.
And it's like they just really don't know. It's almost like Gene Roddenberry just doesn't know what to do with him yet.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I agree. Like I said, I'm waiting for him to get fleshed out a little bit more.
And the more we watch this, the more I'm realizing I don't think I saw much of the first season.
Oh, really?
I don't know if we didn't watch it because, like I said, it was my dad wanting to watch it, and I guess I just didn't watch much of the first season.
Yeah.
Because a lot of this I don't remember, and a lot of the characters that I remember haven't shown up yet.
Oh, really?
And they're a little ways off.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't ever remember Worf being like this.
Yeah, he gets better, I promise.
Yeah, he definitely
Worf
does.
really is a solid character. Michael Dorn is a great actor. It's just, man, he does not have much to do right now.
No.
Well, I mean, him and LaForge both. I think LaForge does better with the limited things that he's given. I think LeVar Burton does a better job.
Well, the thing is, LaForge has data.
More
than Wesley Crusher. He has data to play with. And Worf just doesn't have anything.
No. Yeah.
They have not synced him up with anybody yet. He's just like you said, he's the attack dog sitting in the corner.
Yeah.
Waiting to be unleashed.
Yeah.
So
I thought Riker made a few odd mistakes, odd choices. Again, off the holodeck. So they make they're closing in on the Harada, and the Harada contact the Enterprise, and they're like, we're talking to you in your language. Time for you to talk to us in our language. And he lets them know, we're going to follow the schedule. Blah blah blah. And so they get to where their rendezvous is, and they're ready to start. Basically they're stalling for time. And the Harada haven't contacted the Enterprise. They've not said, hey, you guys are late. Hey, something else is going on, at least as far as we know. We don't think anything has happened off screen. And he's like, open a channel. And they open the channel, and he's like, we demand that you... And then they turn on the sound. And it's like, I thought you're supposed to be trying to keep things easy. Chill. You're supposed to calm people down, chill people out. You don't know where your captain is. You're trying to fix this thing that's been broken for 30 years or however long since the last time you tried to talk to him, and you open it with "We demand." It's like, I don't know. It just seemed like an odd turn.
The whole framing story it was sort of haphazard.
Yeah.
It was just an excuse to.
It wasn't necessary.
It probably wasn't. They probably could have had a malfunction with the holodeck. Like they said, they had just done an upgrade. We're all computer people. We know how upgrades
Well, don't get me
go.
wrong. I'm not talking about the framing story, but there was a lot like that scene is specifically what I was talking about. It was unnecessary. It's like, okay, we know what caused it. We know where they're going, and what they're supposed to be doing. Picard's just trying to relax a little bit in here. That sets up the story nicely.
Mm-hmm.
Leave it at that. Don't go back to that. You're on the holodeck. The only reason you need to come off the holodeck is to talk about the Rainbow Warrior fixing the holodeck.
Right.
That's it. We don't need to see any of the other characters.
Once a guy's got shot, the urgency is already. We've
Right.
gotten the dangers.
We've got the
stakes are
danger.
there.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Yeah.
Right.
because what we've seen so far is that if you make these guys mad, they don't talk to you for 30 years. Okay. There's a video of they did something to a ship.
Right.
You can assume they destroyed it.
Something.
But
they don't want to watch it again.
They don't want to watch it again because once you've seen it, you don't want to see it again. Okay. You know, did they live? What are we talking about here? But as soon as the guy gets shot,
it's like an episode of Sex and the City. Once you see it, you don't want to see it again.
I'm unfamiliar with that phenomenon.
you might be the next guy that gets shot around here.
Are you all fans of Sex and the City? What did I miss? Sorry.
You seem to know more about it than either one of us.
I was just looking for something to
But
run
it's like Matt said, once this guy got shot, there's your urgency. We don't need to go back and deal with Riker wrestling with how to act when he's in charge.
Right.
And these people not wanting to talk to anybody but the captain. We've got that already.
Right.
Move on with what's going on, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you've, like you said, you've also got more. You don't need the aliens to show how Riker's having trouble being in charge. Him and LaForge already kind of had a bit of a tiff. You know, he's like, what's going on down there? Can you fix it? And they're like, well, we don't know. I don't know. But there was a moment there where LaForge almost smarts off to Riker, like, look, we're doing what we can, you know what I mean, and kind of back off. And then Riker comes down and he's like, well, have you tried the comm? Yeah, I tried the comm, and then he immediately hits the comm button. Riker to Picard, and it doesn't work. And it's you can almost see LaForge standing there, kind of rolling his eyes, going, "See, I told you it doesn't work. I tried the comm when you asked me."
Even with that visor, you could feel that.
Oh gosh,
happen
absolutely. So
and then Wesley standing there, kind of looking at him as they're talking about it, and then Wesley's finally just like, "Okay, screw it." And he kneels down, he pulls out a tool, and he gets to work.
Absolutely, and kind of a neat little tool too. I don't know what it would. I don't know how that would be helpful at all. Working on
its own little space.
Pop it out, attach it. Had little binocular things that you look through, and I don't know what it's doing, but it looked neat.
But at that point, that's your scene of him wrestling with what to do when he's in charge.
Right.
We don't need to go back and see him demand something from this alien race that, like you said, it was out of place. I don't know if it was out of character, but it was out of place in this episode.
Yeah.
Way out of place.
Yeah. It was almost they wanted something done on the bridge. You've got bridge characters who aren't getting screen time. You've got Tasha Yar, who I don't know if she had a line over the comm unit, but other than that, I don't know that she had very much to do. You got Worf, who did the dog whistle trick.
Well, and it really felt like that was a scene for Worf.
Yeah, yeah, like you said.
Then when they cut it off and Worf didn't react, it's like, okay, what are we doing? that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah,
but we're talking about people having the different lines and stuff. We were talking about the gangster earlier.
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoyed when you talk about something that just seemed a little bit out of character, because Picard had been doing really well with keeping everybody that was with him in the simulation from talking anything about where they're actually from.
Oh yeah,
or breaking down that third wall or anything like that, and then just all of a sudden he goes off the rails talking about computers that do this and that and the other, and he can do this, and he's from another world, and the world you can't imagine the riches we've got.
Yeah.
And just going and it's like,
yeah,
happened
it's
to
like,
you?
Yeah.
And the gangster's response to listening to all this is computer. I don't know that word.
Yeah, yeah.
Out of all that, that's what you picked up on.
That's what you picked up on.
That's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
And it gave Data an excuse to tell him what a computer is.
And then you got the little squirrely guy. They're driving me insane. Let me shoot them. I want to shoot her. Yeah.
Reminds you of the greasy guy from The Mummy.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. That's who he reminded me of. Benny, yes.
Yeah.
Benny in The Mummy. That's who this guy reminded me of. But
and that was another 1930s, so probably same kind of character.
probably.
Yeah, classic squirrely henchman.
Mm.
So I don't know. Like I said, to me, I enjoyed it.
I enjoyed it. It was
checked
a
a
fun
lot
episode.
It checked a lot of boxes for me, but
It was an episode I didn't expect. I didn't see this episode coming.
oh really?
Not being as into Star Trek as
Mhm.
what you are, knowing where everything goes
Mhm.
years from now and everything. I didn't know any of this was coming.
Yeah.
I had no idea, and so it was really, I don't know. It just really interested me, and I really thought that they pulled off the period piece of the episode. If you were able to take that out and set that aside and make that its own episode,
Mm-hmm.
I would give it higher than a 4.5.
Yeah. Yeah,
I thought it was the outside of the holodeck stuff that drug it down
Right.
a little bit.
Well, even the beginning of the outside of the holodeck stuff, even the beginning of the Harada part, where he's learning the phonetics of it, and he's learning, what do the letters do to the sounds, and it's almost over the top for what they ended up doing at the end, because he just makes up guttural sounds at the end of it.
Right.
But they really go into, when the T is upside down, it makes a Z sound. And when it's followed by these three wavy lines, it makes a B sound. And it does this and it does that. And they had kind of a neat line where she goes, Troy goes, well, you spell knife with a K. And he goes, I spell knife with an N. But then again, I've never been good at spelling.
Yeah.
And I loved that. That was.
But see, up until the guttural sounds he made at the end kind of blew that first part away.
Mm-hmm.
That was a good setup.
Yeah.
I thought that was a good setup to show why he's so stressed out.
Mm-hmm.
He just admitted he doesn't spell well in his own language.
Yep.
And he's having to learn this language that just listening to it sounds insane.
Yeah.
An inverted T makes this sound, and unless it has these other shapes after it, and then it does this, which is a totally different letter. And
Yeah.
he didn't make any D or B sounds really.
It didn't sound like it.
And
I heard
but
it.
but it really played into why he was stressed out.
Yeah.
You've got to get this right. If you don't get this right, it could ruin it. We can never get this chance again.
Yeah.
So he is pushed as far as he can go. I guess when I'm talking about the stuff outside of the holodeck, it would be pretty much anything that happened outside of the holodeck after they went back in the second time.
Okay.
Once they go back in the second time, there was no reason to come outside of the holodeck except for LaForge and Crusher, Wesley, trying to fix
Yeah.
the thing.
Yeah.
And maybe that interaction with Riker there. You didn't need to go back to the bridge
No, absolutely.
for anything. Nobody there had anything to do with the story that was going on.
Yeah.
I
agree.
just it just that if you could just cut all that stuff out afterwards, I think it'd be a much better episode. But I still enjoyed it. I still thought it was really good. It was a fun little episode.
Yeah.
Even though we have sat here and dissected it.
We do. That's what we do. There'll be another callback. You guys, we won't ever get to it. Deep Space Nine. Now I've forgotten his name.
You don't think we'll get 4 complete series into this?
Goodness.
1 hour at a time?
Woo-wee. Captain Sisko on Deep Space Nine. He's a baseball fan. And, Data makes reference to the person who breaks Joe DiMaggio's record, his streak. And it happens in the year 2020 something or 2120 something.
2026.
2026. There you go. And Sisko's favorite player in the episode, he meets him once in a holodeck. He shows up in a dream sequence. Is the guy who broke that record in Star Trek timeline, right? It's some guy named, I don't know, Bunkai, or I don't know, some Japanese player who played for the London, whatever he said their names were.
Yeah, I can't remember what he said.
At that point, apparently London has a major league baseball team. But
Well,
it was kind of
they're on their way to that now. So
yeah.
Yeah.
See?
I mean, the NFL wants one.
Yeah.
So you never know.
and Major League Baseball started having games over there before NFL did.
Oh yeah. So like I said, it was
British
kind of
don't understand baseball though, so it only happened like once or twice.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Cricket's even more incomprehensible to us
Oh,
than
goodness.
baseball is to them.
yeah.
But it's like I said, it's a neat little foreshadow callback from Deep Space Nine.
And I'll be honest, and I don't know really about Matt, but I know between me and Dennis, I'm the baseball fan.
Yeah.
And when Picard was trying to say DiMaggio, I had no idea what he was trying to say. And then
DiMaggio?
DiMaggio, yeah, and then Data corrected him, and I went, wait a second. And I backed it up and listened to it. I was like, okay, yeah, there it is. Yeah, he totally destroyed that name.
Yep. Joltin' Joe? What was the other? I don't even know what it I know Joltin' Joe, but that only because of the Simon and Garfunkel song, Mrs. Robinson. Joltin' Joe is up, gone away. I don't know what his other ones.
You cut me deep, man.
Sorry, man.
You cut me deep.
Sorry, dude. That's not a baseball guy.
I was a baseball geek before I was a sci-fi geek. I just
So
I used to read the backs of baseball cards for fun.
see, there you go. I read the backs of comic book cards for fun.
You're weird.
Yeah, I get that. I get that.
Mine is much more normal than yours, I guess.
It probably is.
Yeah. Matt's not saying anything. I think we're both weird.
I did collect baseball cards, but
Did you?
I don't know why. I never really watched baseball.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. We did basketball cards.
Yeah, I think the only time the holodeck appeared in the movies that I remember is in First Contact,
Mm-hmm.
when they use it to essentially create projectile weapons to kill the Borg, because the Borg keep adapting. So, yeah.
It worked.
Picard leads him in under a certain program, and then
Yeah.
I think it's a Tommy gun.
Yeah,
or something like
exactly.
that.
He comes in and
Yeah.
he does his Dixon Hill
Jeez.
thing, and he
Yeah.
turns off the safety settings, and
Mm-hmm.
Comes out with a
Loads.
Chicago typewriter, huh?
that's it. Chicago typewriter, dude.
Yeah, buddy.
Did you pull that out of nowhere? Did you
I
look
pulled
that
that
up
out of
today?
I pulled that out of nowhere.
That's good.
Yeah.
Wow, the Chicago typewriter.
I used to watch a lot of mobster movies, man.
Man, I'm gonna do my
Noir.
best to use that this week.
Good luck with that.
The Chicago typewriter. I like that. That's a colorful, and I like that.
It is, yeah. That was the weapon that was used in the St. Valentine's Day Massacre.
Okay.
They lined them all up and put out 2 Tommy guns and almost cut every one of them in half.
Huh. Why do they call them
Yeah.
Tommy guns?
The guy that designed it,
Gotcha.
a lot of guns are named after the people who designed them.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Before he started designing clothes, Tommy Hilfiger designed guns.
yes, in 1920s and 30s,
Tommy.
Chicago.
Tommy, yeah, I got you. No, I understand. Sure.
I know that guy. Nice guy.
Yeah. Munitions by Tommy, and now he does cologne.
That's
and
right.
Yeah. No, I get it. No, I'm with you.
Still had the same symbol that he has on his clothes.
Everyone of them's got
Stamped on the side of the butt of every
little
gun.
flag and a little Hilfiger. Yeah, no, yeah, sure. Sure.
How did we get here?
It's your fault. Chicago typewriter.
I don't have much else about this episode. Like I usually have at least a page written, but I
Oh,
got
yeah?
2 things
Yeah.
written for
Yeah.
this episode. It was
Yeah.
sort of straightforward. I'm sure I'm looking
it really
forward
was.
to exploring some more of the themes it introduced,
Right.
but for
Right.
now it didn't really.
Right.
It doesn't really care.
I would-
This episode didn't really care about those that much.
Right. It gets me a little bit excited that they're going to go back to this era in the holodeck. I really, like I said, I listen to a lot of the radio classics now when I'm in the car. I've always enjoyed the old mobster movies and stuff. So the fact that they're going to go back to this, I mean, that's right up my alley.
Yeah. Yeah. That would be
So-
between this and then you kind of get a taste of Data's obsession with Sherlock Holmes. You kind of he kind of mentions a Sherlock Holmes, just
Mhm.
kind of one off. So you'll.
Well, he
you'll-
didn't seem interested in the character until
Right.
they told him that he was a 20th century Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah.
And then that piqued Data's interest.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Pretty interesting. All right. So now that we've dissected it and picked it apart, is it better or worse than where you were when we started, Matt?
I'd be willing to go up 3.5,
Yeah.
just because of the introduction of some things that might come in later.
Yeah.
Some forward-thinking stuff. But yeah, overall, it was still.
Middle
It
of the
had some
road.
cool stuff in it.
still in
but
that
it
same
wasn't-
range. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mike, did yours change at all?
Not really. I mean, if anything, I'd be like mad. It would change a half a point, maybe go down to a 4.
Yeah.
But I'm still comfortable with the 4.5.
Yeah.
How about you?
I was thinking about a 4. The off holodeck stuff really was kind of pointless, to the point where some of the character decisions were just really bad. Riker's, the way he acted, Worf, the way he acted. Like I said,
but it's hard to say at this point, like from where Matt's sitting, where he says he's not seen any of these episodes before. It's hard to say that Worf acted out of character.
That's true.
Worf doesn't have a character yet.
That's true. Worf is a cardboard cutout.
Worf acted.
Yes.
A little bit.
A little bit.
A little bit. He sat up straight that one time.
That's right. So, yeah.
But
I'd probably come down half a point and go 4.
And a lot of times we see, like at the end, we saw the conversation between LaForge and Data.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when they jump back to the holodeck, when they jump back to the bridge, when they first start saying that the holodeck is down, well, Data's on the holodeck, LaForge is checking out the holodeck. So when it comes back to the bridge, you see Worf sitting next to Wesley Crusher. Mm-hmm. I want those conversations.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah. Can you imagine?
That would be great.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, Wesley Crusher, his ears perked up at the phrase teenage mating rituals. And then we've already kind of got an idea of what Klingon mating rituals are like. What in the world are they talking about up there?
Yeah. When they start talking about women, and that went to Riker, and he was sort of like, made some kind of reaction.
Yeah.
Well, sure to get his reaction.
Yeah, they kind of wiped
at that point.
When Crusher was wiping the lipstick off of him, and you kind of got to look at Riker. He's like, "Oh, you sly dog, you."
Yeah.
Picard got him some hollow honey up there. I see how it goes. That's, like I said, just odd.
One thing that I kind of forgot about it, actually, and I know we just did our second numbers and everything. I know we're trying to wrap up, but
no, you're fine.
The question about whether or not the world goes on when the program is turned off, that was actually brought up a little bit earlier, because when he goes in the first time, she says, "I'm afraid someone is going to kill me."
Yeah. And he does turn. He makes
Picard
a point
leaves,
to turn it off,
and he turns it off and shuts down the program. When they go back into where he said, "This is where I had it saved," and he goes back in, it's the next night, and she's dead.
Right. He reads in the paper that she's dead, so it obviously moved forward in time at least a day,
right?
If not more.
While he was out for a couple of hours.
Yeah. I mean, it could be the whole idea of a second chapter. Chapter 1 ends with...
And it could have been, he ended with chapter 1 where she came up and offered him the job, and he said he would think about it, and then the beginning of chapter 2 is, I should have thought quicker because she's dead now.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a thing that happens in books and stuff.
Absolutely.
So, but I mean, it just struck me as odd that, we're going to go back into where I had it saved. What? She's dead now. Wait.
Yeah. What? Huh? How did you... What? Yeah. I thought that too, especially when he mentioned, is my wife and kids, will they go on? It's like, well, obviously something's still going on. You're moving forward in time without the program being turned on, whether or not that's programmed in or it's happening. But then you wonder, if he doesn't go back and play that program for a year and he goes back in, how much time has passed? Has he, at that point, all right, well, your cases are all closed, people are all dead.
Yeah.
Everybody, your building got subletted out. Nobody knows.
You didn't pay your bills, man.
Yeah, you've been missing for 17 years. What are we supposed to do? Yeah.
We got any alternate titles for this one?
I haven't been able to come up with one.
Yeah.
You?
I don't know. Some play on a woman named Enterprise. I liked that little line that he did where got me. Is it a blonde or a brunette? Oh, Oh, she's something, all
Yeah.
right. Her name is Enterprise. Sounds like a working girl to me. Okay.
A dame
so
named Enterprise.
a dame named Enterprise. Yeah.
A streetcar named Enterprise.
There you go. There you go. All right. So next week, little preview here. We get introduced to another recurring villain. So Q is already kind of a recurring bad guy. Next week we meet Data's brother for the first time.
Is he Lore?
I'm
Lore.
sorry. The robot has a brother.
He does. The robot's creator created multiple versions. At this point in the story, we don't even, as of today's episode, we don't know that any exist.
Right.
Coming up next week, we meet the first of two brothers, at least that I know of. And like I said, his name is Lore, though they are considerably different. But like I said, he'll be a pretty good recurring villain over the next 7 seasons.
Okay.
So,
Right. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, the episode's name is Data Lore.
Yeah.
So it's a nice play on.
Yeah.
There you go.
Should be pretty good.
Good. All right. Well, until next time.
Thank you.